This is Khabib Nurmagomedov and Ramzan Kadyrov. They had a great relationship for a long time and considered each other close friends. Ramzan publicly supported the Dagestani fighter multiple times, and the media even reported that Ramzan gifted a brand new Mercedes to Khabib's father, Abdulmanap. But in 2022, everything suddenly changed. Ramzan started publicly insulting Khabib, deliberately escalating tensions and trying to downplay the Dagestani fighter's achievements. On top of that, an unexpected political angle emerged, which ultimately led to serious consequences and an incredible finale. But let's go step by step. Ramzan Kadyrov is the head of the Chechen Republic, which is a federal subject of Russia, with a population of 1.5 million people. It borders Georgia to the south and another Russian region, Dagestan, to the east. Chechnya and Dagestan have historically had close ties. What should you know about Ramzan? Ramzan Kadyrov is a close ally of Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. To understand just how much Putin respects and values him, take a look at these clips here where Putin and Kadyrov watch in admiration as Ramzan's son, Adam, demonstrates his shooting skills, hitting targets with ease. By the way, despite his young age, Adam has already received every possible medal and award from the Russian government. During his last visit to Chechnya, Vladimir Putin even kissed the Quran, showing his deep affection for the region, its people, and their religion. Chechnya plays a crucial role for Russia. To understand the situation, let's mention the ongoing war with Ukraine. Since the war began, over 43,000 Chechens have been sent to the front lines, while the total number of Russian troops involved is around 600,000. Ramzan Kadyrov can rightfully be called one of the main enforcers of the war and a ruthless warlord. But as many already know, Ramzan is not just a political and military figure. Kadyrov controls local mafia networks and has a strong grip on several sectors of Russia's economy. He wields significant influence over law enforcement and the country's business sphere. Kadyrov owns massive official and unofficial residences, flies on one of the most luxurious private jets, the Airbus ACJ319, and when it comes to gifts for his friends, he prefers brand-new luxury cars. When asked where his money comes from, he simply replies, "From Allah." According to rumors, his fortune exceeds $10 billion, but what's the connection between the president of Chechnya and the former UFC champion? The answer is simple. Ramzan Kadyrov is a huge fan of mixed martial arts and sports in general. One of his hobbies is patronizing and supporting famous athletes. Here's a clear example. Alexander Emelianenko, the brother of legendary MMA fighter Fedor Emelianenko, trained for one of his fights in Chechnya, alongside Ramzan Kadyrov. You can find plenty of footage online of them training, sparring, and having a good time together. In 99% of these videos, Kadyrov is right there with them, taking part in the action and enjoying the moment. Dominates professional fighters while they do everything possible to make him look tough and powerful. Another UFC fighter, Khamzat Chimaev, met a similar fate. When Khamzat started making a name for himself in the UFC, Ramzan welcomed him with open arms. And of course, the first thing he did was film their sparring sessions and training together. This is a typical move for authoritarian leaders obsessed with their own egos, always trying to prove something to the world. We'll talk more about Khamzat later. In exchange for training together, athletes received and still receive immense support from the Chechen president: cars, money, influence, connections, and protection. Ramzan Kadyrov can offer anything. Not a bad deal for a fighter, right? As for Khabib, he often appeared in photos with Kadyrov. They were always smiling, joking, and seemed like close friends. Ramzan constantly wished the Dagestani fighter success and called him a role model for the younger generation. When Khabib's fight with Tony Ferguson fell through for the 5th time, Ramzan once again showed his support on Instagram. He wrote, "Khabib, you are a true fighter, a warrior, strong-willed, infinitely brave and courageous. You have never bowed your head before anyone, never lost a fight, and always won convincingly, beautifully, and with honor. 24 fights, 24 victories. That says more than any words about our Khabib. This incident will only make you stronger and more confident, my dear brother. Stay strong, don't worry, and remember the best fights and the greatest victories are still ahead." Logically, we can assume that Khabib was a strategic asset for Ramzan Kadyrov. Khabib's popularity and influence were growing at an insane pace, and his friendship with Kadyrov boosted the Chechen leader's image. In return, Khabib received Kadyrov's patronage and support. After one of Khabib's fights, Kadyrov even gifted a brand-new car to his father, Abdulmanap. In short, Khabib was raising Kadyrov's public profile and feeding his ego. Everyone was happy with this arrangement, but then something changed. Khabib became globally recognized and deeply respected. Many would go on to call him the greatest MMA fighter of all time, opening up endless opportunities for him. What did this lead to? Khabib started paying less attention to Ramzan Kadyrov. Their relationship began to cool. Nurmagomedov became a powerful figure on his own, which started to worry Kadyrov, who was used to being constantly praised and glorified. Kadyrov has always aspired to be a religious leader and has maintained strong ties with the Arab world. But now Khabib's influence and popularity began to surpass his own. This started to frustrate the Chechen leader, and he couldn't accept it. In May 2021, one of the most significant incidents occurred, marking a turning point in the relationship between Khabib and Ramzan. Ramzan Kadyrov is a big fan of Khamzat Chimaev. He often went live on Instagram to share his opinions on various issues. During one of these streams, Ramzan said the following: "Khabib is a good athlete, but he's a UFC project. He is 100% a project because he has a good relationship with Dana White. If a fighter misses a fight, they are immediately removed from the rankings, but Khabib was never removed. Even he knows he's a UFC project. If he's not, then tell me, have you ever seen our brother Khabib fight under the Russian or Dagestani flag? He knew exactly what he was doing when he became a champion. He became a champion without making mistakes. The fact remains, he is a UFC project. That's my opinion, and I think he would agree with me." Khabib remained silent on these statements for a long time despite media pressure. Eventually he responded, saying he didn't find anything offensive in Ramzan's words, and admitted that, to some extent, he was indeed a UFC project. But things didn't end with Ramzan's statement. In the comments of that live stream, none other than Khamzat Chimaev appeared and wrote, "We'll tear him apart too if he wants." By this time, Khamzat had already become Ramzan's new favorite fighter and mascot. This was largely due to Khamzat's background. He is Chechen, but immigrated to Europe with his family. He and Ramzan were often seen together, whether posing for photos, training, or just having fun. Ramzan even claimed that Khamzat was stronger and more talented than Khabib. Later, Khamzat had a conflict with Khabib's younger brother Abu Bakr, but they quickly made peace. During the same controversial live stream, Ramzan brought up another interesting topic. He publicly offered Khabib any money he wanted to fight one of the fighters from the Amit promotion, a promotion owned by Kadyrov himself. By that time, Khabib had already retired from professional fighting and did not accept the challenge. If you look at it objectively, this attack on Khabib could simply be seen as an attempt to generate hype, promote his organization, and attract attention. But no one expected what would happen. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched an attack on Ukraine and attempted to seize Kyiv. Soon after, mass mobilization began in the country, and men from all regions of Russia were being indiscriminately taken and urgently sent to fight. Dagestan was hit especially hard, with men of all ages being taken and sent to the front lines. protests and demonstrations erupted in Dagestan. The Russian government was then forced to turn to Khabib for help. They needed a public figure who could calm the people and support the war. At that time, the Russian government was desperate for public support because pressure was mounting in the country, and people saw no reason for the war. But Khabib remained silent. He neither supported nor condemned the war. He simply disappeared from the public eye and moved to the UAE, where he had always been treated with special respect by the Arabs. This became yet another major issue, where Ramzan and Khabib's views diverged. While Kadyrov was the main advocate and agitator for the war, Khabib refused to comment publicly. Their conflict could have ended there, but this was only a small part of the unfolding story. Due to political instability and differing perspectives, their misunderstanding and tension would only continue to grow. In 2023, the conflict between Israel and Palestine escalated. The Israelis began bombing Gaza and using military force to eliminate Palestine's combat potential. In response, protests and riots erupted worldwide in support of Palestine and against Israel's military actions. On October 29, 2023, mass riots broke out at Makhachkala Airport in Dagestan. A group of protesters opposing the arrival of a flight from Tel Aviv stormed the terminal and later the runway. They were expecting to find Israelis arriving in Dagestan and wanted to severely punish them for their government's actions. According to various estimates, their numbers reached up to 1,200 people. They chanted anti-Semitic slogans, waved Palestinian flags, and acted aggressively. As a result, over 20 people were injured during the protests, including police officers. Ramzan Kadyrov's response was extremely harsh. He stated, "If even one person in our region takes part in unauthorized riots, arrest them and lock them up, or fire 3 warning shots in the air, and if the person does not comply with the law, fire the 4th shot straight to the forehead. They won't come out again. That's my order." At the same time, former UFC champion Khabib Nurmagomedov reposted a publication from European wrestling champion Khabib Nurmagomedov on his Instagram page. "Please don't ruin the futures of young guys and punish them as an example to scare others. That's not how it works here. It's time to understand and start an open dialogue with the people. On the contrary, show an act of kindness, meet them halfway, grant them amnesty." Khabib and Ramzan's opinions would increasingly diverge, and their words would be interpreted as direct opposition to each other. The story would soon take an even darker turn. On June 23, 2024, in Makhachkala and Derbent, armed militants carried out a series of coordinated attacks on synagogues, churches, and a police checkpoint. During the attacks, 22 people were killed, including 17 law enforcement officers and Orthodox priest Nikolai Kotelnikov. 5 attackers were later killed by security forces. 2 synagogues were burned down, one of which was an architectural monument. 2 Orthodox churches were also damaged. A counterterrorism operation was declared in the region. The investigative committee of the Russian Federation announced the initiation of a criminal case under the Article Terrorist Act. Military equipment was deployed to Makhachkala and Derbent, and a 3-day mourning period was declared in Dagestan. 5 days after the incident, police raided Khabib Nurmagomedov's gym in Makhachkala. According to media reports, one of the militants involved in the terrorist attack was MMA fighter Gadzhimurad Kadyrov, who had trained at the Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov school. Khabib remained silent about the incident for a long time, but both political figures and Russian media began pressuring him. Everyone was eager to hear the champion's opinion on the terrorist attack in his homeland. Finally, he published the following post: "May Allah protect us from all such situations and grant us peaceful skies above our heads. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and let everyone look around at who they are surrounded by, who their children interact with. The education of the soul is more important than the education of the body." Later, Nurmagomedov dismissed the claims that terrorist Kadyrov was a student of his martial arts school as absolute nonsense and false. According to Khabib, the man had only trained at the gym for a certain period of time. These responses did not sit well with propaganda groups and political figures. "I still don't understand. Does he condemn radical terrorists, or does he sympathize with their families and loved ones?" wrote popular military blogger Yuri Podolyaka. Political analyst Sergei Marov went even further, calling Nurmagomedov's statement very slippery and unmanly. He suggested that Khabib's gyms could be used to train terrorists or, more precisely, to create an environment where those who recruit terrorists feel comfortable. Under media pressure and attacks, Khabib was forced to shut down his legendary gym. Meanwhile, the government filed a case against him and hit him with a massive 302 million ruble debt. All these troubles came as a direct result of his defiance and refusal to comply. As for Kadyrov, he was much more straightforward in his response. Terrorists have once again shown their true vile and cowardly nature, and as always, they chose unarmed and defenseless people as their victims. They killed a sick elderly priest. What happened looks like a despicable provocation and an attempt to sow discord between religious communities, Kadyrov wrote on his Telegram channel. All these events highlight one undeniable fact. Ramzan Kadyrov has lost faith in Khabib and decided not to protect him. He didn't protect him from media attacks, police raids, or sudden financial troubles. Yet all of these things were within Kadyrov's power to prevent. Knowing his influence, we can say with certainty that he could have stopped it, but he chose not to. Khabib's attempts to talk to the U.S. president only escalated the conflict with the Russian authorities. Kadyrov, by the way, has always viewed the United States as the enemy and villain. He has repeatedly stated that the U.S. is behind all of humanity's problems. Because of his outspoken remarks and brutal policies, Ramzan Kadyrov has been placed on every possible sanctions list. He and his family are banned from entering American territory. Meanwhile, Khabib refused to support his country's stance. He did not support the war, did not do what was expected of him by the Russian government, and instead began to see himself as an independent person. Kadyrov, on the other hand, chose to stay loyal to Putin and fully support the war. Khabib's rise to fame only made Kadyrov feel jealous and confused. Once close friends, they are now distant and no longer on friendly terms. Khabib no longer depends on powerful supporters. He doesn't have to follow the orders of authoritarian leaders anymore. And this story isn't over yet. We'll see what happens next.